I don't know whether that worked.
We're all waiting.
I don't know whether I'm on mute. Am I on mute? Can anyone hear me? Oh.
Oh, yes, mute all, but they can unmute. They can do that.
So I will mute you.
Please sit. Yeah. Are you staying with us this morning? Oh, okay. Yeah, go for it. Yes, it's up to you. You can stay. Margot, can you... Sorry, folks online, we're just getting ourselves set up here. This is too far to the side. Needs to be, like, maybe get one of those tables. Leonie, the one next to you. Oh no, she might sit there. She might sit there. Actually, leave that one, get another one. Oh, yeah. I need it. Oh no, you don't need another table, actually. I just need this to be elsewhere. Maybe put it up here. Try here. It's just otherwise I'm turning to the side. That's better. Okay. It's not ideal, is it? You can see the laptop on the camera.
Yeah, but what you are using laptops. So
yeah, but I don't want it. Okay, hopefully I don't knock it flying. It'll be interesting.
It's okay.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome back online. And hey, look, there's a bunch of us here in the Gompo, which is so delightful. You know, we've been having a couple of months of one or two of us in the Gompo, so it's so delightful to welcome back some of our precious Dharma jewels. Thank you very much. And of course, we have two new nuns here with us. Do you want to come and say hello? Just stand around here. I don't know if you saw them already online. You saw already online, but maybe some of you missed. We're still rejoicing. Venerable Yangshan, that way. This is a mirror image. And Venerable Wangmo, previously known as you know who. Okay, excellent. All right, we'll get started for this morning. We'll start with the refuge and bodhicitta prayer. So for those who have that somewhere in our retreat book, those of us who are here, and maybe you've got the retreat book yourself, those who are online, it is on page 84. Those of us here in the Gompa, you have to flip up the top bit and look at the LC. Yeah, so taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. And then we'll offer a mandala, which is like offering everything most gorgeous in the universe up to all the Buddhas. We've got all these offerings here on the altar, and then we just maximize our merit. All these offerings that are laid out, as well as all the ones we imagine on every atom of space, multiplying like Samanta Bhadra as much as you can, every atom of space, everything most beautiful and gorgeous you can think of. Sashi po ki shuk shin me tok tramari rabling shi ni te gen pa ji Sangye Shindu Mikte Owa Etro Nam Nam Jila Chupashu Idamurat Namandala Kamniriatayami. Okay, so just to give a little bit of housekeeping. So we'll today and tomorrow, 9 to 12, as we've been doing previously. And we've been taking a 10-minute break. However, those of us who are present here, our coffee machine is open. I think there's coffee and cake, and we've got tea out the back, and there's a group of us here who want to catch up with each other. So we may take a little bit longer. So we'll try for 20 minutes. And what I might do, I might come back in, and if you're still blah, 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 just, come back up. Meanwhile, I can chat to people on Zoom. So in the meantime, if you're on Zoom, and we've put you on mute, but if at some point you want to ask a question, you can unmute yourself, but then put yourself back on mute again. And I see a number of you have also turned your videos off. That's up to you. If you might want to do that to save bandwidth. I'm not sure how it works. I'm not a techno whiz, but it might be bandwidth your end. I'm not sure. But anyway, that's totally your call. Or I think, Geshe Zopa one time was giving a teaching on Zoom, and one of the early ones. And he said, well, as you're listening to this teaching, you might be making a cup of tea or making dinner, or I immediately sat down, It's like, gosh, I can see me. Anyway, I think we've all got used to Zoom, right? And I think also there's people on YouTube as well. So welcome to everybody. So this teaching on transforming problems. So we'll be going through the course outline, which I think most people receive, but don't worry, we'll just talk about it. And then if you want to get the course outline, we can send to you. But this weekend is more general introduction, and the following weekend is next weekend, because we're doing it in 2 halves rather than a retreat weekend here. Then it's the 8 verses of thought transformation next weekend, which is the bulk of a lot of the presentations on this particular module. So I've given you a course outline and then some recommended readings. This is the Transforming Problems by Lama Zopa Rinpoche. I know it's a bit shiny there on the screen. It's not a very big book, but it's sort of, this is it. This is the go-to, Transforming Problems by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, which is based on teaching, I think he did in 87 or sometime in New Zealand. And then I was, had the great fortune when this book was hitting the press, Door to Satisfaction, which is also a bit shiny. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, I know, did this teaching in 2006 in Australia and New Zealand. So they're gems, absolute gems. And actually, I started writing down all the COVID crisis teachings from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and I just watch them all, Oh, well, there's another one's come up today too. Yeah. So as you may be aware, Lama Zopa Rinpoche is in a Kopan monastery in Nepal. And every few days is giving a teaching in relation to COVID-19, or using that as the tag to get us to watch another Dharma teaching. Not that we need, you know, we're pretty good at, we just run to them anyway when we can. So there's quite a lot piling up there. But quite a few of them, I left out some that weren't directly on this topic, but sort of most of them are, because all of the Buddha's teachings is about transforming our mind. So I've thought about this, how it's called transforming problems. And I thought, well, actually, it's not about transforming problems. It's about transforming our mind's response to what we perceive as problems, what we label as problems. So sorry, it's not about change out there. We've been doing that since beginningless time and hasn't worked for us. So it's about change internally. So this whole genre of, it fits into the Lojong thought transformation mind training, mean the same thing, body of practices on the, in the great scope of the Lam Rim. So the Mahayana, we just set the motivation to become a Buddha for the benefit of all beings. So this is the great scope motivation. And those who've been participating in all of the Lam Rim teachings that we've been doing. I've got my mask, but I don't know if I'll put it. I watch the people on the broadcast with masks on while they're talking. I'm like, how do they project their voice, you know? But anyway, Venom Wongmo kindly made some color coordinated for us nuns, and there's others too. If people want one, we've got plenty here. Okay. Which is interesting because I will get back. Oh no, I better get back to this. I'll go off on the track. I did go off on the track. So in terms of our practice, it's in the great scope. So some of you are already familiar with this Lam Rim outline. We have it in every module that we do, but we have some new people here who aren't. So Yasmin, Claire. Rachel, sorry. Sorry, not Claire, Rachel. Okay. So, yeah, it's in that genre. So the previous module, for those who are participating, developing how to develop bodhicitta, how to develop this mind of enlightenment. We say we want to become a Buddha to benefit all beings, but then we have to put it into practice. So we looked at a particular method there, the 7-point cause and effect, Arya Asanga's 7-point cause and effect, which was like, so 4th century India. And these teachings were all passed on in secret. Because why? Because it's like jumping into the deep end of the pool all of a sudden. All of a sudden you're in the deep end and you haven't done the foundation stuff. So we'll look at that this morning, you know, sort of some of the foundation stuff. Of course, you know, we transform problems. Yeah. Hey, I want to be rid of all my problems right now. Join the world. Animals are the same. Humans are the same. We all want to be rid of problems. We don't want any problems. We don't want any difficulties. We don't want any suffering. And we want every happiness, for sure, with us on that. But what this is saying, actually, the only way you can change it is by changing how we respond to difficulties and problems and COVID-19s as they arise. And I thought this is a very pertinent time for these teachings, because if you, you know, I've said previously that here it's been a wonderful opportunity. I mean, who thought we would have an ordination during lockdown? Maybe lamas. Not the ones who got ordained. They're like, you know, because I can say now they had expected to be ordained with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who was going to be gracing us with his presence mid-March. And of course, you know what happened. And that didn't happen. So we had these, you know, these two, plus we've got another 2 new nuns as well. And so like, and at that point, Geshe Sultram said, well, you know, good preparation for a year. You just have to wait a year or perhaps more. He didn't say or perhaps more, but it seems it could be. And all of a sudden, the conditions came together. And actually for us here in the Sangha community, a lot of conditions have come together for us to be living in a more monastic environment, and Geshe is really encouraging us. So we're like, actually, it's quite nice, you know. And I was talking to some other universal education friends a little while ago saying, you know, how do you feel about coming out of lockdown? Actually, we quite like being in retreat. And we know we haven't been 100% in retreat, but just having that feeling in the world of slow down. We see worldwide this change of people taking stock. We're doing that here. You know, of course, a lot of difficulties, a lot of problems, you know, how we're going to survive. Everyone's in that boat, right? And so there's that. But look at the creativity. It just blows my mind, all the creativity that comes up. So if we focus on the positives, this is what part of this training is that we turn our mind to what helps us move forward, because what does complaining and whinging ever do? Just gets us depressed and down and feeling disabled, not disabled in the sort of technical sense of having a physical or mental disability, but in the sense of disempowered, you know. So it doesn't help us, and then it doesn't help anyone around us, and we all go down the sinkhole, isn't it, basically? So these teachings, Lama Tisha, when he, you know, sort of, they fit within the great scope, as I said. They fit into the part of, we were looking at how to develop bodhicitta in the previous module, and I know everyone wasn't present for that, but if that's where it fits in, how do we cultivate this mind of enlightenment, this mind of bodhicitta? So it's a practical thing. So, you know, next weekend will be on the 8 verses, which are pretty intense, those who are familiar with those, and I think a few of you are. I see a few nods here in the room. Pretty intense, you know. It's asking a lot, and each verse gets harder and harder, and you go, whoa, I'm just adjusting to the first one, you know. So anyway, Lama Atisha brought this, and this is why they were passed on in secret, because initially it was passed down in this oral tradition through the, you know, Atisha to his student John Tompo, and then the Kadampa lineage of, you know, the Geshe Potawa and Geshe Langwa Tangpo, who composed the 8 verses. And it was then Geshe Chökwa who found a snippet of those. See, he didn't even have the direct teachings, you know, he found a snippet, and he was really intrigued by the 8 verses. Well, he didn't know there were 8 verses, he found a snippet. And so then he went to find Geshe Langwa Tangpo. This was in the early 14th century, I think. Anyway, around there, 13th century, early 13th century. And of course, Langri Tangpo had passed away, but he came to his teacher, his student, Geshe Sharawa, who held those teachings. And out of that, Geshe Chökwa taught the 7-point mind training. And I mention that because we refer to just a part of that in these teachings. It's a very elaborate teaching. It says 7 points, but boy, every one has all these subsets. It's incredibly elaborate teaching. I remember when Jumper Jaft started teaching it in Jumper Gendon, he started teaching at Vajrayana Institute, and it started with 6 weeks, you know, and they said, oh, I think I need the whole year. And they said, I think I need next year as well. So it's pretty elaborate teaching. So this became a heart practice of the Kadampa masters. So just to see where it sits in the lineage. Now, this is not a big history lesson. We want to actually, why we're here is we want to get out to the juicy bits, don't we? Okay. So this Lojong mind training has 2 aspects, and one is bringing happiness into the path, you know, our graduated path to enlightenment, and the other one is bringing suffering into the path, and that's the part we're focusing on, because we all go, oh great, can't we focus on the happiness part, you know? Can't we do the happiness one? And the reason why is because our mind goes to that sort of judgmental, critical mode very quickly. So our minds are weak. Otherwise, we would directly and naturally go to the, you know, the mind would regard everything as a source of happiness, you know, as an opportunity. You know, one of the nuns I was talking to the other day, and she said, oh, Candrella told me when she was here, so this was 2014, you know, Candrella graced us with her presence, and said to this nun, you have no more obstacles. I'd stop right there. Said, only challenges. So this is what we have to work with our mind, reframing basically. So this is the central idea, transforming problems. And this is from this text that Lama Zopa Rinpoche used for the transforming problems. Where have I put it now? Transforming problems, which is a commentary on a text, a very short text called Using Suffering and Happiness in the Path to Enlightenment, compiled by the third Dodruchen Rinpoche, Jigme Tempa Nyuma, who was in the 19th century. That's Lama Zopa's commentary there. And so it's combining all of the traditions. Well, actually, this was drawing on from the Nyingma tradition, the Sakya tradition, and the Kagyu tradition. Anyway, the traditions in Tibet, of course, the one we follow, the Gelugpa tradition, is based on this Kadampa master. So it's the most recent tradition. Okay, history lesson over. So that's just all the background for you. So this passage, whenever we encounter problems in relation to living beings, human or non-human, and most of our problems, we would say, are in relation to living beings, and they seem to be of the human variety. Correct? I think because we don't know what the bush turkeys are saying when to us. Well, I don't know. This morning, the other one was saying, I was at my door saying, let me in. I know, you've got more food in there.
Bush turkeys are a little bit more predictable.
Bush turkeys are very predictable, yeah. Food in that order. Living beings, objects, or events in our life, like COVID, you know, we can use that. Our mind is used to focus on the suffering or negative aspects, correctly, of anything. You know, just think of the early days of having restrictions put on us. I mean, fortunately, we sort of, I think, got a bit used to that, and our minds came to some agreement about that, hopefully. Or did we all still keep bucking and screaming and I'm just going to sneak out, you know? Well, some people did, actually, and they got fined if they were in quarantine. So our mind just wants to buck back, isn't it? Oh, this is different. This is change. And of course, all the Buddhist teachings started with everything is by nature impermanent, but our minds just get stuck. So that's what it's saying. Even the smallest negative incident can produce mental pain in us. Like, for example, a mosquito that keeps you awake at night. I mean, how big is that mosquito in your mind when they're buzzing around, or any other, you know, sometimes I turn on the light because there's some insect buzzing around and I have a look and it's a teeny tiny thing that has aggravated my mind and disturbed my sleep. See, mine, part of the problem. So we become unhappy and there's no chance for happiness to enter our life. And when we just have to check up, is this true? We can think of many examples, you know, of our mind being, because we're habituated to that. We're habituated to find criticism, to find fault. And this is inviting us to actually look at people's good qualities, not focus on their faults, you know. When we had the presentation on relating to a spiritual teacher, we definitely talked about that in relation to a spiritual teacher, but it's not just in relation to a spiritual teacher, because as they say in these teachings, everyone's your spiritual teacher, because especially those that rub you up the wrong way, because it's on the basis of having to find a new normal, as we keep saying these days, then that we progress on the spiritual path. So thank you very much to all my, I mean, of course, when we're really angry with someone, we're not thinking thank you very much. Usually, I mean, speaking for myself, you know, but that's the training. That's what we're invited to do, okay, in this training. So if we don't realize the fault lies in our mind's way of gaining experience and experiencing and interpreting that experience, and if we continue to blame external conditions for our problems, then our suffering, anger, aversion, and so forth will increase. Again, the Buddha said, check up with your own mind. If you find this not to be true, please, we can debate. There seems to be no debate so far. Okay. Traditionally, all appearances arising in the form of enemies, so that everything out there is an enemy. Now, we might say, I'm not in that camp yet, or at all. I don't see everything out there as the enemy, but we can see in the world that that happens, right? Can't we? We can see examples of that happening in the world. Oh, everything is, you know, the sun's too hot, it's too cold, nothing satisfies. And this was the first teaching of the Buddha in the Four Noble Truths. You know, we have this mind of dissatisfaction, discontent, unhappiness, and it sort of pervades our being. Why? We sort of go, well, why do we have that? Because we've been doing it since beginningless time. So we got very good at it. And it seems to be just in our nature, but of course it's not in the nature of our mind. Our nature of our mind is what? Clear, like space, not bogged down by all the sort of looming dark clouds of depression and anger and so forth. Just completely, you know, limitless space, limitless potential. This is inviting us to tap into that limitless potential, not only for myself. Yes, I want to be rid of all my problems, but everybody else does too. So how am I going to help others is to transform my mind, you know. So our big motivation is, you know, become a bodhisattva, train in these practices to then become a Buddha. But we take step by step by step by step. We don't try and do it all at once. You know, we read these stories of the Buddha and you go, whoa, way to go, can't do that. Exactly, can't do that yet. And it may be a long time to come. Can't do that yet. So just, I just wanted to draw on some of the teachings that Lama Zopa Rinpoche has been giving. The very first thing that I recall that Rinpoche gave us online was transmissions of prayers by Tagtong Gyalpo from Tibet. And one was to avert disease, one was to avert famine, and one was to avert war and conflict. I mean, more recently, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, a couple of weeks ago, those who may have I mean, isn't that been profound? I was just like, I like the fact we can zoom into the room of His Holiness, and he quite likes it. He says he doesn't have to go anywhere. He just sort of sits in the armchair and talks. So he's quite chuffed. Well, manifest that he's quite chuffed. I mean, he's quite chuffed anyway. He'll deal with whatever circumstance. But more recently was the Singanada Chenrezig practice, exalted lion's roar practice. We have here, those who are familiar with this, it's in the prayer house where you have the image there and the practice there. And so I mention that because at 5 p.m. today, Geshe Tenzin Zopa is giving a commentary on that on YouTube for FPMT Australia, or, you know, on their YouTube channel. And so those of us are here are going to watch it on the big screen here. So if you're not here, but you're nearby, come and join us, because now we can have people. We have people. Wonderful. So, you know, anyway, so we have these opportunities that have come from really from terrible things happening in the world. So these prayers by Thakdong Gyalpo, the first one, the one about disease, of course, we all wanted to do that one to avert. And then Rinpoche gave us these mantras, practices for coronavirus, and, you know, the Vajra Arma mantra, which we've been doing every day, and blowing it up our nose. Blow the mantra up. These are the self-protection and black manjushri. These practices. We can do copies for those who want. These are for our self-protection. And then it's like, what do we do for protection of others? And it's seemed to have become more pertinent because we're opening up in the world. And I'm like, now I want to put my face mask on. Now I want to hand sanitize wherever I go. I mean, I've got into the habit, you know, in the chemist. I go into the chemist. Oh, sanitizer, great. And I go to another shop. Oh, hand sanitizer, great. So my hands haven't dried out yet. It's okay. You know, they've been cleaner than they've ever been my whole life, I think. Anyway. So Thakdong Gyalpo was 14th, 15th century, Tibet, Sakya. He was at Sakya. He actually started a few monasteries, built stupas. He was an engineer. He built 58 iron bridges in Tibet and Bhutan. He was known as the most travelled Lama in Tibet, but I think His Holiness the Dalai Lama has well exceeded that now. That was back then. This is now. But he was, yeah. And he was said to be, Lama Zopa Rinpoche talks about him being Shakyamuni Buddha, and then in other commentaries talk about him being a mind generation of Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, who established Buddhism in Tibet. And neither are contradictory. If you see, he's a Buddha. He was a Buddha. So in this area, they had this prevalent disease, and he was able to. They tried all the rituals, or the prayers, or the whatever they could to avert it, and it hadn't happened. And he was able to engage these practices that averted disease in that area of Tibet. And then also there was famine. Then there came famine, and so again he was able to avert that to such an extent that they say those with pure view saw barley grain, of course it was barley, it was Tibet, sampa, raining down from the sky. I presume they shared it with everybody else who didn't have pure views. They overcame the famine. And then the one for war, as well, there was warring and, no reconciliation between these clans. And so Rinpoche was saying how these practices are so important this day and age, because we are, it's always referred to as this time of great degeneration, or the 5 degenerations, where there's degeneration of life force. We could say that that's particularly strong now, with coronavirus and stuff. And not just that, we have many ways people can die, but just look at, there's more and more diseases coming up, and they keep talking about getting prepared for the next pandemic and so forth. So there's more disease, and this was all predicted by the Buddha. There would be more physical diseases, disease of the body, but also more diseases of the mind, mental illness. And look at that. That's prevalent in the world, isn't it? It just seems to be, sometimes I think, was I just not aware of it when I was younger? And maybe that was right. But it's like, who's not affected in some way? So this is the time in the world, more warring. And when Lama Zopa was talking about this, he said, we're coming towards the end of the world. And, Rinpoche talks in eons, the Buddha talked in eons, and you sort of go, yeah, that's coming sometime later. And then, because he said there'll be disease and there'll be famine and then there'll be war. And Rinpoche said, not just wars here and there, which we have currently, but the whole world at war with each other, the whole world. And then the world will end after that. And then was it World Health Organization said, or someone like that, someone in authority said they were concerned that they predicted a famine was going to happen soon. And I suddenly went, oh, these things are happening quickly, Of course, we can transform all of this. It doesn't have to happen. We can be the Tagtong Gyalpos of this era, He was a great engineer. He was a great doctor. He was a great architect. He was a great stupa maker. What wasn't he great at? And a great meditator, Buddha. So, okay, maybe you can't do all of those. But we can work on our mind. And so none of these predictions have to be fixed. It's all got to do with the world's karma. As Rinpoche said about the whole COVID situation, it's a ripening of karma, which is from past lives, collectively as a world. And as it says in the Golden Light Sutra, in the sort of inviolable rights of kings, that when the leaders of the land, it says kings because they were kings then, don't take responsibility for their people, when they don't come down on, they allow criminality in their land, and so forth, that crops will cease to flourish, that disease will come, and so forth. And we see that happening. It's an imbalance of the elements. The elements out externally in the world are the same, the elements internally in our bodies, So it's all interdependent. And we see that imbalance. Look at the environmental, what's the new environmental movement called? What's it called these days? It's not environmental warriors, it's something else. We had the Friday protests before COVID, No, it's a movement. And I forget the...
Fridays for the future.
Maybe Fridays for the Future and all of that. Greenpeace is old. Yeah. You're as old as me. No, you're not. You couldn't be as old as me. Well, you could be, but you're not. No, Greenpeace is good. I'm not slamming Greenpeace, but I mean something young people that has come up more recently. Anyway, you know what I mean. There's a lot of environmental movement. And then look at even something like, George Floyd's tragic death. But I keep thinking about, his saying that he wanted to do something good for the world. Now, he probably didn't think the thing I'm going to do good for the world is die with a policeman's knee on my neck, gasping for breath for 9 minutes and 21 seconds or whatever. Unbelievable. It has stirred up this whole movement. Look at his brother. His brother probably didn't think he'd suddenly become a spokesperson for justice and so forth. And look at that in the world where people are saying enough is enough is enough is enough. So it has really brought up because, and I think this is also a COVID effect of people are taking stock of many, many different things. So there's an opportunity for change to happen in the world right now. We see that opportunity here. We're saying we're not going to go back to what we were. We don't know what we're doing. We know what we're doing in terms of the program, and Geshe is guiding us as Sangha. He's given us a few, monastic roles, things to do, which includes doing, I'll just say, because I'll put it out there, we haven't sort of worked out how we're going to offer this, but he said, we have to, for our students, offer more pujas and things like they do in the traditional monasteries. People write to Kopan or Sarah and say, I need puja for my dear loved one who's dying or so forth. He said, we can be doing that for our students. So I'm just putting it out to you all that Geshe is encouraging us to do these prayers and practices. And someone said, but what if it's a practice we don't know? And he said, we'll just learn it. Simple. So it's wonderful. So out of all this, Geshe is stepping up our monastic responsibility, and we're becoming that monastery. who knows, we may have those 400 nuns that Rinpoche predicted, or Candrila predicted when she was here. She said there'll be 400 nuns here. And I kept thinking, where are they all going to stay? But hey, look, you know, I don't think it's all going to happen at once. But when Geshe-la offered ordination to our 4 precious new nuns, when Geshe-la offered that, the immediate response, you know, instantaneous response from Rinpoche was, you know, fantastic, wonderful, should happen more and more. So basically giving Geshe-la the green light to go ahead, because Geshe-la, when travel opens up, do you realize that people are going to know that you ordain? Because the ordinations haven't happened here for a long time. Geshe Jamyang didn't ordain. Many of the Geshis in our centres in Australia don't ordain. So, you know, these opportunities have come up. Wow, who would have thought? Who would have thought it? So, okay. So changing our mind, changing our habitual way of thinking and functioning. And this really is the discourse right now, isn't it, in the world? Yeah, that this is what we're talking about. We're looking at doing things differently. And we have to take this opportunity right now, because in a year's time, we could be looking back with everything going back to the way it was and going, oh, we had that opportunity and we didn't take advantage of it, you know. So in what ways we can, you know, I'm not a premier, I'm not a chief medical officer, I'm not any of those things, but whatever ways we can, you know, following our precious guru's advice, because they're giving us so much, you know. Okay, so we start with bringing around changes. So to strive to understand the reason we are afflicted by such suffering and problems is fundamentally related to the weakness of our discriminated mind. So what does that mean? The reason we are afflicted by suffering and problems. So first of all, we have to identify what these things are. What is suffering? So this is, you know, the teaching of the 4 truths of the Buddha. We all know what suffering is on a certain level, of course. We know about aches and pains and loss and grief and death and so forth. Obvious things, obvious forms of suffering. The suffering of suffering, as the Buddha said, but then the suffering of change is a little bit more subtle, you know, that things we took to be a source of happiness, like you're all sitting, those, wherever you are, I hope you're sitting comfortably. I can see Lisa sitting comfortably. Hello, Lisa. Hi, Rachel. Rachel's waving. Hello, we hope to see you up here next week. She was hoping to be here this week, but couldn't make it. Yeah, so you're sitting comfortably, but you know what's coming next. If I say, okay, seeing you're sitting here comfortably, just sit here comfortably for the next 24 hours and see what your mind does just at the thought of that. You've got to be joking, right? We immediately want to move because we're made to move. We're dynamic bodies. We're made to move. So of course, it's comfortable and, you know, pleasant. And then, you know, after a while, we notice the discomfort and jiggle. And please, if you do that, do move around, whatever. Of course, those on Zoom you're probably moving around anyway. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't have a clue. But sometimes, actually, it's good to just endure, you know, a little bit of difficulty, more than a little bit, because we can a little bit, but not so that it becomes excruciating. So because it's not that what was comfortable and what was pleasant changed into something else, that's impossible. It was that we didn't notice that it was just a different form of suffering, a more subtle form of suffering, because it says suffering of change. It doesn't say the pleasant becomes unpleasant. It's just that were I to say, okay, stand up now, and you can, if you wish, stand up now, and you go, oh, good, that's a relief from suffering, from sitting, right? And so it feels pleasant then. But actually, it's only a relief from the more suffering of sitting or the pain of sitting. And so this is less suffering of standing, if you're following the point. Anyway, just an example. But the main thing is that no matter where we're born, in whatever realm of existence in samsara, even in the Kushi God realms, there is suffering. Okay, they have a more subtle body. They don't have the aches and pains of the bodies that we experience. So therefore, they're in the lap of luxury, they think, until it all comes crashing down. And we see this happening every day in the world, don't we? People like, you know, high flyers and then kaboom, come crashing down. So this sort of thing happens. So you can think you're in the lap of luxury. So no matter whether you're in the lap of luxury or if you're in the dire straits, actually, if you're in dire straits, I think, you know, as the Kadampa master say, it's better to be, you know, poor. You can't fall as far. I mean, you don't have as many wants. You adjust, you deal with it. So I just wanted to mention the 7-point mind training from Geshe Chakawa is called the leper's Dharma, because he was the one who made these teachings, took them from the realm of secrecy and oral tradition and made it open to everybody. So it's quite radical, you know, just like the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha made the teachings open to everyone, came from the Brahmin class where only the Brahmin class at that time in India could actually have the luxury of having, you know, sort of be a spiritual seeker and get those teachings and so forth. So he made it open to everyone, the mind of equanimity, equality of all, male, female, what do they call it? The lepers, like the Dalits, lower class, caste, upper caste, medium caste, whatever, everybody. So that was quite radical. So our discriminative mind is the one that likes you because you do what I want. You make me feel good. You know, appeal to my ego. You puff up my ego. You cooperate. You're kind to me. You love me, etc. In other words, I feel good in your presence. But the minute that you say something I don't like, what happens to the mind? It gets agitated, and why? Because you're the problem. You upset my mind, right? That's how our minds function, isn't it? That here we are, everything's nice. As one of the prisoners said to me one time, the first guy I ever visited, there's a liberation prison project, and first time I was asked to visit, and I visited this guy, and he said, you know, I sit there in the morning, I'm meditating, it's all very peaceful and happy and, you know, wonderful. The next minute, when he stands up from meditation, my cellmate really pissed me off, right? Because, oh, it's fine when I'm on my own. What do we say? The world's great if only people are the problem or something like that. That's how our minds function. It's ridiculous, but that's what happens. So, okay, so we've got to recognize that our mind does discriminate. It judges, you know, it discriminates all the time. Pleasant, unpleasant, friend, enemy, because you're the one who now disturbed my mind. Or maybe, I mean, I always think enemy is too strong a word. I always think of armies, but, you know, the one we want to avoid, the one we don't invite around. They're now, in New South Wales, you can have 50 people to your house, but you've got to socially distance. I thought, who's got a house that big? But actually, under lockdown, we were deemed a household. Those of us resident here, 160 acres, however many hectares that is, I don't know. And so it's like, and then when they said households could go out together, I thought, if the 40 of us all go out together, I think we'll get in trouble. Not that we were planning to do that, but you never know. But when we had the ordination, I have to tell you, you know, we got a response from somebody who said, you've just posted online that there were, because when you have ordinations, it's only Sangha who are able to be at that ordination. We don't, you know, that's how it happens. So usually it's someone, it's people who have higher vows than those taking vows, right? So that's how it works. So in other words, yes, you weren't invited and we were in lockdown at a time when we could have 20 people visit from outside. So there were those of us resident and those of us from outside, and we posted online that, you know, after the ordination, it was 21 or 22 of us here because we could invite a few nuns. Oh, and our fellow Gompo, are you online, Gompo? I think he is. Yes, I can see you online. Gompo came up and someone said, I don't think you should put online that you had 22. Aren't you breaking the law? No, we're not, because we are family. But it's interesting because you do have to be aware of what people perceive. Now our doors are open, you notice. No more ugly, sorry, we're closed sign down there. No more witches' hats. We're open for business. Yay. So our discriminating mind was what I was saying. Friend, enemy. And then everybody else we're indifferent to do because they neither help me nor harm me. So if I'm wanting to become a Buddha, which I said in the refuge prayer, may I become a Buddha to benefit sentient beings, what does a Buddha do? A Buddha helps all beings without exception, mind you, is aware of all beings without exception simultaneously at the same time, knows exactly where they're coming from, has a few other qualities, right? Knows exactly how to guide each and every one individually in their own language, in their own, you know, capacity, and et cetera, but doesn't discriminate, doesn't judge. Doesn't go, last Christmas, that thing you gave me, you know, whatever. I don't know. Doesn't do that. A Buddha doesn't do that. So if I want to become a Buddha, I sort of got to fake it till I make it, act like a Buddha, isn't it? Not set myself up, I'm a Buddha. No, that's wrong. But think, well, what did the Buddha do? What are the qualities of the Buddha? I better learn what they are and develop those in my mind. They're all positive. Surprise, surprise. Because what does having a positive mind do to our energy level? Suddenly we have energy. Yes, yeah, Venerable Yangshan's going like this, you know, it just lifts us up. So we need to be lifted up all the time. We need to lift ourselves up and each other up all the time. So, you know, I was talking to someone the other day who was upset about something and I just said, stick with the winners, you know, isn't it? Stick with the winners. That's the Buddhas. And the gurus, they're the winners. Okay. So this discriminating mind, that it's called a partial mind, you know, that it, you know, it doesn't take into account everybody. Now we say that I want to, you know, all beings without exception, and then we have to say, who are my exceptions? Because they're my objects of compassion. They're the ones I have to work with. They're the ones who are going to help me progress on the spiritual path. So when I was doing the cultivating, excuse me, I'm having some chai. Thank you. Oh, sorry if you're not having chai. Is there still more chai out there? Maybe in the break time. Thank you, Venerable Dachin, making the chai for our pujas. When I was doing the Cultivating Emotional Balance teacher training with Paul Ekman and Eve Ekman and Alan Wallace, when you could travel to Thailand. Back in the day, remember the old days? Sorry. I know you miss me. Maybe not. Anyway, so one of the things that Paul Ekman presented was this emotional episode timeline, you know, which is about checking our mind as early as possible. Because what he talked about was this emotional alert database. It's very handy to think like this, that our emotional alert database is like our baggage, that we've got stuff that's come with us. So some of the stuff that's come with us, and we'll talk about this more a bit later on, is the, self-grasping mind. So we innately have this self-grasping mind that thinks there's this me here somewhere and gets it all wrong, but makes this elaborate story about me and then mine. So that's the self-cherishing mind. We'll go into this in more detail. Self-grasping and self-cherishing. So we get that wrong. So we've got these things that innately we're born with. And then from our experience in life, and then the Buddha would say on top of that, and the ripening of karma and so forth, which because Paul Ekman well, I don't know if he still labels himself not a Buddhist, but maybe he does. It's okay, he can label himself whatever he wants. His daughter, Eve's a Buddhist. She says, yeah, she's Buddhist. She's taken refuge, she's Buddhist. Right. So that comes together with conditions that arise, events that arise. But it's like we've got this emotional alert database just got its radar out ready for anything that's going to fit in with my view of things. See, I told you so. See, I told you the government were up to no good or whatever. I told you, see, there's proof. We look for the things that are going to affirm that. And most often it's this critical judgmental mind, isn't it? So we're constantly looking out for that. And then, as the Buddha would say, give that one a break. Stop having this discriminatory mind. We need to discriminate in terms of discriminating wisdom, quite a different matter, using the wisdom wing. But this is the one that is just based on ignorance, which is our root affliction, so that we get it all wrong in the first place. And this is described as a weak mind. We'd say, actually, that's a very strong mind. It quite pervades my every moment. So I've habituated to it, but it in itself is a weakness. So when we look at something like anger and you think that's quite powerful and strong, and then people who practice patience, as people think they're a walkover, but patience actually is a strength. So because something is loud and out there doesn't mean it's a strength. It's actually a vulnerability, a weakness. So this will not move us forward. We need to recognize that. And we need to recognize to overcome this discriminatory mind. And when we were looking at the 7-point cause and effect, cultivating the mind of enlightenment, the mind of bodhicitta, through that method last time, the first thing we do, isn't it, is recognize how indeed we are all in the same boat. I mean, one thing about COVID is made us also reflect. I mean, there's many things about it that make us reflect in a way that it's non-discriminatory, whether you're rich, you're poor, whether you're, in fact, old or young, any country in the world, it seems, everyone's susceptible. It's not that the virus says, well, I only picked these type of people, it doesn't work that way. So, so it's having this mind, maybe not like the virus, maybe that's not a good example of non-discrimination, in our compassion, in our kindness, in our loving concern for others. It doesn't mean invite them all to your house because you can. I mean, we've got to use our wisdom, but nonetheless, to wish for their happiness, even from a selfish point of view, if other beings are happy, I'm happy. If their mind's at peace, the world's at peace. Well, if my mind's at peace, the world's at peace. So this is, these are the minds we need to cultivate. So we start to, prevent the attention from fastening onto the painful aspects of a problem, even pain itself, So I keep, and every single time I still go to this knee, even though I'm experiencing more pain in the other knee at the moment, I've still got my story that my left knee is the big problem, right? The pain there. And even like the meditations that you do if I look at my knee, not look at my knee actually, but if I sit quietly, and then I feel the sensations in my knee. In fact, they told me it's not in pain. Oh, there's a bit more discomfort there and a bit less there. And the pressure changes and breath changes and it's actually quite warm. And, I analyze, I go, where is that elaborate pain I describe as my painful knee? It's in the mind, So that's just a physical thing. But we say our physical things are probably, well, they can be limitations, absolutely. But, when we do that with other people, and we do it all the time, we elaborate from one thing. Like with mosquito, I said, suddenly, I don't know, when I'm lying in bed and that mosquito's buzzing away, I think, oh gosh, it's huge. There's a whole horde of mosquitoes come to attack me. Your mind's very quick, isn't it? He needs to go and watch movies out there because I'm very creative in my own mind. I don't think anyone would pay to see a movie that's creative in my mind, but there you go. But I'm surprised what they do pay to see, so there you go. So don't fasten on the painful characteristics. Why? You'll only ever experience more and more pain. Why do we want to do that? Instead, gain experience in letting our mind rest and stay in its natural, relaxed state. So when we notice our mind being agitated, and this was what Paul Ekman was very interested in, still is very interested in, how early can you bring awareness in there of the disturbance arising in your mind? How quickly does that come in? That awareness, when can you bring that awareness in? Because while it's still the slightest subtle irritation, we can do something about it. When it's full-blown anger, what can we do? Wait till the volcanoes erupted. Our own, I mean. It's sort of too late. We haven't kept our mind in check. So this is why it's mind training. This is why when we meditate and we just by simply focusing on the breath, any thought that arises, we're not trying to push it away. It's the job of our mind to think, but letting go of the energy that grasps at that. It's the grasping at it that causes us problems. And you just like relinquish it, relinquish it, relinquish it, relinquish it. Investigate our wrong views. Use analysis, Anyway, but letting your mind set in a natural state, which is completely still, relaxed, spacious, open, and then everything is possible. Because we haven't put the barrier in to say, oh no, that won't work. Without investigation, that won't work. Wasn't it Edison who said, someone said he failed to 99 times or whatever, however many times with a light bulb. And he said, no, all of those experiments meant the 100th time we got a light bulb. Thank you very much, Thomas Edison. We're still appreciating that today. So that sort of never giving up, always chipping away, knowing this is where I'm heading towards. I'm going to create a light bulb or whatever his thoughts were, but he achieved it. I'm going to be a Buddha. I've got to take, baby bodhisattva steps every day to say, am I moving forward with that? What steps have I moved forward with? And of course, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche would say, and rejoice in that. Rejoice in that. So that's what we do. So we've got to not fasten this habituation of thinking of the difficulty, of thinking of the problem, of looking for that in our mind. We're doing that all the time. Even, and I'd say especially in the face of challenging situations, seeing it as opportunity to move forward. This is so hard. I mean, it sounds great, but try and do it. I mean, you are probably trying to do it. It's hard, isn't it? It's hard. But nobody ever said the path of a bodhisattva is easy. If it was easy, we'd be Buddhists. We'd be sitting here going, cool, now I can really benefit the world. Like the Dalai Lama, that teaching that time, the Chenrezig empowerment, I think there were 1 million people originally, and that 8 million people viewed that. 8 million in the world. Isn't that just wow, amazing? And I thought, I don't know if there's a stadium that big, if His Holiness had been traveling around, that 8 million people would be in, would it? So how amazing. It shows that the draw card of His Holiness, the power of that, because he's worked on his mind lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And what is possible as a human being in this world today, this is the preciousness of our teacher showing this is possible. And again, we might say, well, I'm not the Dalai Lama, but I can work towards. I can remind people of the Dalai Lama. I'm pointing to the nuns because it happened to me one time in Ashfield Mall in Sydney. Well, outside in the street, and there's a carload of what we would call hoons, labelled hoons. Hey, Dalai Lama! Now, my mind could have gone very negative, couldn't it? But I thought, wow, I remind you of the Dalai Lama. How fantastic is that? Pretty good. They said the word, Dalai Lama. They knew who the Dalai Lama was. So this is the thing. We changed our mind and our response in those situations. Anyway, I waved them, smiled and waved. Okay. And then we start to develop an opposite attitude towards problems, cultivating joy. Now, this is a higher level practice. Fantastic problems. What does Lama Zopa Rinpoche go to? Apparently people go to Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Well, I'm sure they do, and go, oh, Rinpoche, I've got this problem, I've got that problem. And, my problem is my partner. My problem is my job. My problem. Fantastic. Wow, wow, wow. That's what Rinpoche says. Learn to wear your problems like ornaments, like earrings. That's what he says. If you think about it, like these deities, they have, well, Chen Rezik has, jewels up here. Usually it's 3 necklaces, armlets, bracelets, earrings, all these gorgeous. And when we're doing our meditation on Chen Rezik, we visualize everything most gorgeous, radiant, all those ornaments, radiating rays of light and so forth. Each ornament is a realization of the Buddha, of Chen Rezik. So if you think about that, if you're wearing them those of you who wear jewelry, I can't see anyone wearing any jewelry. Is anyone wearing any jewelry? Oh, it's a bit subtle. I'm blind as a bat. Ingrid's got earrings on. She had to tell me. Oh, no, I can see it on that side. Oh, yes. Sorry. Yasmin's got the earrings on. Damn, I can tell. See her realizations. You're wearing your realizations. Just think. Joyful, proud. Oh, wonderful. How amazing, how amazing, how amazing. Fantastic. Wear them beautifully. Well, you are wearing them beautifully, I have to say. So like that, we take as, and this is cultivating the mind that says, when Chodron Rinpoche, when I was in hospital and His Eminence Chodron Rinpoche sent the message, wow, 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 and because I wanted to be at his teaching, so the poor pity me mind was arising. Oh, I'm not there, I'm here in hospital. And of course the answer came, fantastic. Of course it did. Better than eons of hot hells. And I thought, okay, I know, I have not been a good girl. I'm not talking past lives, I'm talking this life. Hey, I've got better, I've improved. So I know I've got a long way to go, but I'm better than I was. Actually, when you start to implement change and start to work on yourself, as they say, and then don't expect people to necessarily say anything or notice anything. But I ran into someone who I had taught in my theatre background, 10 years previous to that time. And she was the first person who actually said something about how she noticed how I'd changed. But She was saying, oh, you were such a terrible. It sort of wasn't the word you wanted to hear. You know? No, you're supposed to praise me. Didn't you know the I? So we got to get over that. It was a good lesson. Now really tell me what you think of me. Thought of me. Yeah, I got that. Okay. So maybe people will say things like that. But the thing isn't about what other people say, it's about how we feel and how we deal with situations as they arise. And I have to say, in this whole COVID time, of course, it's so relevant, that I've thought how wonderful it is that we have the Dharma to make some sort of sense of this, you know. And not only if we don't make sense of it, then we've got our lamas giving us practices to protect ourselves, to protect others, actually to keep us busy in this whole time. So how precious is that? So many people in the world don't have practices of any kind to fall on a spiritual path. You know, of course, you know, we've all got, you know, Buddha nature, but many people haven't sort of accessed that in this life. You know, whatever they want to label it, haven't accessed that. So, you know, we've got to think like that. I'm doing this for their benefit. They don't have the opportunities I have. They don't have the teachings I've had. They don't have the understanding I have. And you might say I don't have much understanding, but just think of people who have absolutely none, you know, can't make any sense whatsoever. So we have compassion for them. So to apply this in our lives, we need to have a training in virtuous practice that accords with our mind's true nature, that accords with our mind, both in the sense of where we are in our capacity, and keeping in mind, yet again and again and again, that these teachings were for many centuries passed on, you know, teacher to disciple in that sort of oral tradition to those whose minds were ready, right? So there is that, but everything that's in the nature of virtue, that at least the virtue of what? Not harming others, minimum, but there wherever we can benefit others, and that's where we are in this stage, as much as we can to benefit others, then that makes the mind happy. Maybe that's why we're here, because we know that makes the mind happy. And guess what? The mind wants to be happy. Surprise. Because that is our true nature. It's in sync with reality. So that's why we have to train it. Otherwise, it remains a theoretical understanding. So we have to actually put it into practice. Otherwise, it's like, yeah, I know what the 7-point cause and effect, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I know what the 8 verses are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But how am I actually engaging that in practice? Not all of it all the time to perfection, but the only way we get to perfection is training, training, training. That's why it's training. That's why we go to the gym. I think, can we go to the gym again? In New South Wales, I can go to the gym now. My friend Drolka down there, she's so excited she can go back to the gym. I can go to the gym. She's a very active person. So this is the mind gym, the mind training. This is what we have to do. We have to work out really hard because we don't want to change. It's not even that we don't want to change. It's just so hard, isn't it? And people say, but it's so hard. Yes, that's the whole point. It is so hard. That's why it's not for the faint-hearted. It takes a lot of courage. That's why I say the brave bodhisattva. It takes a lot of courage to cultivate these states of mind where, you know, the ego kicks and screams. I just feel like there's this permanent 2-year-old in there going, and throwing tantrums, you know. No! Okay. Right. The virtuous practices have to be built on a firm foundation of right understanding. In other words, we don't necessarily, sorry if you are, jump into the deep end of the pool straight away. We've got whole 3 scopes here. We've got this foundation, and this foundation that we have outlined here, this outline here, is the foundation that you'd see even comes the bits in brackets, precious human rebirth, even comes before entering the path, before the lower scope, even before that. Because if we don't realize how precious this life is right now, we won't do anything. I mean, we'll keep doing what we're doing, but take it for granted. And that's the most of the world, isn't it? Yeah. When things are good, they're good. When they're bad, nothing else to do. Well, no, so all these practices here are what we say lower scope, right? But of course, we engage in them all with the mind of a Mahayana practitioner wanting to become a Buddha. So this trajectory is for one individual's practice, for one life that we, or maybe a few more lifetimes. But wouldn't it be great to have all these realizations in one life? Yeah, fantastic. Okay. So then, precious human rebirth. As it said in the text, for transforming problems, you have this precious human body in order to serve other living beings. I mean, even contemplating that as an idea is radical. Oh, the purpose of my body, the purpose of my life is to serve others. That is the purpose of my life. Now, on what level we get that? You don't have to ask a doctor or a nurse or an AMBO or police or shopkeeper or whatever. It's serving others, right? But as Dharma practitioners, it's serving others not just for this life, but all future lives. So the essence of sort of having had a precious human rebirth on the basis of what? Having practiced pure ethics in past lives on the basis of having vows, having maintained those vows. So in this life, I want to continue that. So take as many vows as you can that you're going to keep. And there's a bit of proviso there, isn't there? We have to be realistic, about what we can do. Not everyone's going to get ordained, right? And I always think, if everyone ordains, who's going to have the babies, No, we've got to have more Buddhas coming up. We need more Buddhas to be.
Realize everything in this lifetime.
Yeah, that would be great. But given that we're not, probably speaking for myself personally, going to realize all of that in this lifetime. Anyway, someone's got to have the babies, I say. Anyway, sometimes I think, not that I know these days, but that, it's whatever relationship we're in is going to propel us on the path to enlightenment, isn't it? I mean, living in a family life is not easy, is it? Oh, it is for Leonie. She's got she's smiling. It must be easy for her. They've left home. Anyway, that comes up. We'll talk about that more in the 8 verses. not Leonie, that thing. So on the basis of having ethics, on the basis of having practiced in past lives, pure ethics, in other words, refraining from harm to others, and most likely also on the basis of, because here we are in a Mahayana scope, great scope, Mahayana, great scope, wanting to become a Buddha to benefit others. So one would assume in the practice then, a Mahayana practice, these are all Mahayana practices. So these are practices for the great scope. From our stainless prayers, if you think, these bodhisattvas have made stainless prayers in past lives, Buddhas, made stainless prayers. So we have, for example, Vajrasattva. Some of you are very familiar with the Vajrasattva practice, which is a practice that we do for purification of all these ratty states of mind and afflictions and any harm we've done and so forth like that. As a daily practice, we do Vajrasattva. So Vajrasattva, when training on the path, had such a problem he'd take the vows, but then wouldn't keep them. And it was such a struggle that he made a commitment that when he became a Buddha, it would be to benefit those who had difficulty like him in maintaining and actually, you know, he'd just like always do the wrong thing, be naughty or, you know, whatever, break his vows. And so he made that commitment. And so look what's happened as a result. We have these, that's the power of those practices. Of course, all Buddhas equally have that, but it's like all that power of purification arising in this form of Vajrasattva. Or all the swift energy of all the Buddhas is rising as, you know, Mother Tara, or the compassionate energy arising as Chenrezig and so forth. It's not that every Buddha is, you know, infinitely compassionate, but for us to train our minds, we focus on the individual ones to cultivate. Do I want to cultivate compassion, the swift action, purification practice, whatever? The Buddha for everything, isn't it? But that's been based on their strong prayers when training in the path. So just think the strong prayers that we put into place, and this is what they say, we've made stainless prayers. Maybe our stainless prayers were, may I, you know, proceed to take a precious human rebirth and progress on the path, you know, and keep my practice going. You know, maybe we do that. Of course, only a Buddha knows karma, knows where we've come from and so forth, but we can deduce a whole lot of stuff. So it's stainless prayers and that, and the practice of, well, the 6 perfections, but particularly the practice of generosity. Pure practice of generosity, no strings attached, no, well, if you help me, I'll give you this, you know. No. Pure generosity. And the generosity of the Dharma, you know. You mean giving Dharma, whether it's giving free books or just being a role model from what you already know and living that in your life. I mean, you just got to walk into IGA and you're giving the Dharma, you know, because they know the nuns down there at IGA. It was very handy being Venerable Wangmo, before she ordained, she very kindly was, like Eva, very kindly doing shopping for us, Sangha. And Venerable Wangmo, you know, when they had the restrictions on, they said you can only have this many of that and that many of that. And she said, oh, well, I'm shopping for however many nuns you were shopping for. And because they know us, because we all go down there, she got a dispensation. She was allowed to shop for the lot of us. Thank you very kindly.
8 soy milks.
She had 8 soy milks, yeah. She had to, please explain the 8 soy milk. She probably listed all our names. Anyway, it was lovely. So this precious human rebirth, that's not just being born human, but on top of that, having all the conditions come together for us to indeed to be together, to progress on the path, you know, to put our Dharma practice into practice, to even meet the Dharma in this life is a coming together of all the virtue that you've practiced in past lives as well. And to actually want to do something with that on top, you know, all these conditions. I mean, you know, we go through that when we look at the, you know, generating the mind of renunciation, which is the mind definitely not wanting to have any more suffering. Thank you so much. I want to get off this cycle of samsaric suffering. The mind of renunciation has to be based on relinquishing the worldly concerns of this life, the 8 worldly concerns. So in our, well, they're summarized in the 8 worldly concerns. There's many worldly concerns. In our Guru Puja, on page 149, if you've got the book, Training the Mind in the Common Path of the Lower Capable Being, the Precious Human Rebirth, realizing how this body of freedoms and richnesses, so we talk about the 8 freedoms or leisures and 10 endowments or richnesses or opportunities, is found but once. So this is why it's so precious. We've worked hard to get this life, so we have to make use of it. Difficult to obtain. It's so rare. We take it for granted because we're surrounded by other human beings. It's 7.6 billion of us. Doesn't feel so rare. But if we look at how many beings are in the animal realm and then how many beings are in the hell realms and so forth, it just magnifies. Is this you know, very rare, very precious. And we worked really hard to get it and quickly lost. As you can see, just how quickly you can die, you know. You know, I was very touched of him, you know. So people send us names to put on our dedication list for those who've passed away. So my friends in Sydney, and I knew their cat was dying, and she was on our prayer list for those who were still alive. And then they said, oh, can you say your prayers for Emmy, the cat? You know, we put her down this morning. And then also for Sam. And I'm like, so how is Sam? Because I thought, I haven't heard the story of Sam. Well, Sam was 35, you know, their nephew. These are close friends of mine. I thought, gosh, I haven't seen Sam yet since he was about 14, you know, so he's in Western Australia. So he had a problem with drugs, and this time he couldn't get resuscitated. Gone. You know, many beings in the world, many things. You can die. Actually, Lama Zopa Rinpoche in this was talking about one man. They were indeed, and this is the one, awareness of death and impermanence. Indeed, he was giving a talk about this, that you can die at any moment, you've got to be ready, and so forth, right? He gave that talk, and then he swallowed, he had a sweet that was there. You know, they have those sweets when you're at conferences and things, and he was sucking on that, got stuck in his throat. He died after giving the talk about be prepared for death. I mean, he didn't do it deliberately, right? It just happened. So that's how we have to be prepared. He was right. We have to be prepared for death. Incredible. I don't think anyone forgot that talk. You wouldn't, would you? Pretty spooky. Okay. And then I'll just, you know, quickly add, because these are all, you know, these are all previous topics, those who've been doing the Discovering Buddhism course. We've covered these in detail. The understanding, and this was the one on samsara and nirvana, but this is the samsara side because we're focusing on the suffering side. Suffering and its causes, the first truth and the second truth, the first teachings of the Buddha, you know, to be able to identify what suffering is and abandon its causes, which are what? Karma, which is the throwing karma that's brought us into this life. I mean, if we're going to have a life in samsara, this is as good as it gets, right? So we use that to the best of our capacity, but we really want to become a Buddha. We really want to have at least individual liberation, the mind of renunciation. Definitely want to not suffer anymore, but then we have to abandon the causes that are, or the afflictive states of mind, which the Buddha said there's 84,000 afflictions. Sort of get depressed when you hear that. But they all come down to this root one, ignorance. He also says 84 antidotal teachings, but we don't have to go through 84,000 one by one. I mean, I can't even name 84,000 one by one. It's usually summarized much smaller amount, you know, either the, you know, 3 root poisons or the 5 or the 6 or, and then the secondary, 20 secondary ones and so forth. But if we get this root one, the root ignorance or confusion that gets everything wrong, that elaborates, you know, I was saying, if you're nice to me, I'll elaborate your positive qualities and I just think you walk on air and you're just the most gorgeous, amazing thing I ever met, and see how long that lasts. Usually lasts until they move in, doesn't it? Or does it last that long? Oh, I don't know. Anyway, you know what I mean. And then, so that one, and then the mind, and then when they do something wrong, you know, leave the towels on the bathroom floor or something, then they go into the enemy camp. Oh, you don't do anything I ask you to do. Anything I ask you to do, you just slop. Then we exaggerate all their negative qualities just from one towel on the bathroom floor. And immediately mind says, it wasn't just the one towel. So these negative states of mind, so we eliminate all those. We've got to identify them, realize that they're harmful for our peace of mind. And then if we don't keep them in check, they're harmful for others. And we're not going to help others if we're harming them. Impossible. And then, of course, the whole thing of actions and their consequence, in other words, karma, realize if it, whatever we think, do, and say affects others, basically. It affects our mind, and it lays a future imprint in our mind, a future tendency to do that thing again and again and again. Now, that's great if it's a positive tendency of mind, because all our capacity, our compassion, our love and everything gets stronger and stronger and stronger. It's the negative stuff that we want to be rid of, because that's the stuff that pulls us down. So that's why we focus on that, not because we're such a depressed lot, because that's the stuff we have to change. Okay. So I think on that note, we need a tea break. That's pretty heavy duty. Don't you think? Don't you think there on Zoom, we need a tea break? Well, we're going to take one here. And we actually have a coffee shop that is offering coffee and cake, I believe. But we also have a tea station out here. So I think we have to at least we'd take a break till 11. Is that okay? It's okay with everyone here. Those at home, go and make yourself a cuppa. If I can, do you want me? I can put you on no, it's on mute all. But if you want to make yourself a cuppa, oh yes, I got the thumbs up from Lisa. Then, hi Lisa. Oh, she's having a cookie. And from Sarah, hi Sarah. Okay, go make yourself a cuppa, have a cookie, have a cake, or whatever you prefer. And you can unmute yourself if you want to go and grab it and come back and chat. Just unmute yourself and chat amongst yourselves. See you soon.
If anyone needs a refresher on what those 8 concerns were there on this page here.
Did you want to? We won't be able to get any copies of these, I don't think.
Yeah, I can make copies.
For the other two,
You,
or at least
you got it electronic. I sent it out to everyone electronic.
That's what I was going to say. At least electronic.
No, all of this. You got
Did
all
you
of
get
this.
this one electronic?
The-
Yep. And
yeah.
this one. So as long as you got it electronic.
Yeah, I do have it.
Oh, perfect. Okay, good.
But if you want copies to have here, we can make copies.
That would be good. I'm on the
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like a copy to have here with you? Oh, okay, cool.
Good. So just.
So you found your way here, okay?
Yeah, sorry, I was a little bit late.
No, that's okay. It's
I got
always.
a little bit lost.
Yeah, I get that.
But anyway, I got here.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Where? How far away are you living?
I live in Brisbane, but
Oh,
I stayed
okay.
at the glass house now in Zico overnight.
Okay.
So it was a way here that I wasn't sure. Yeah. Anyway, I was lucky I found people randomly on dirt tracks when I got
Yeah.
lost. Just there at the right moment.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, when we if you want to check out the hut,
I do, yeah.
yeah, maybe we'll do that just around lunchtime.
That'd be
If
really
you
helpful,
can
'cause
check
I
it
might
out
stay
and see.
here in the
Yeah.
future, it'd be a bit easier, I wouldn't get lost.
Yeah.
And I don't have to walk uphill once.
Yeah. So there is I put out some refreshments here, and Eva was going to.
I've got some milk here.
Yeah, so we've got some
Oh, wonderful.
tea and stuff here. If people want to have that here, there's a kettle, or you could go down to the cafe and they'll be happy to have some coffee and cake down there. But I thought if you wanted to, I think I put that on the email afterwards, we have lunch together down in the cafe and have a big
Lovely.
catch up together.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So where could we print these?
I can go down to in the office. I don't know if anyone's in the office.
Yeah, I don't know.
I can go down with
Well,
you.
you go and have your little break.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
And I wanted to look at your book. I'm not sure I've got an e-copy. If I have it.
Yeah, it's easy to download e-copy. I think maybe it's not easy to download an e-copy. The library's open as well, which is just down below. And Pam's in there. She came up momentarily. She's working down there at the moment, but she is down there. And I've put out these books on the side there. So she's happy to lend you some books while she's here. She's going to join us for lunch too. Hello, my dear. Oh, lovely. I love tahini. Oh gosh. Oh, so spoiled. No, that's fine. So spoiled. Thank you so much. It's a wee care package. Lovely. Thank you. Yeah. Oh no, she's gone away for a couple of days break. Yeah. She'll be back Monday, I think. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Very kind. Oh, it's so good to. It was so good to see you folks. Oh. Yeah. Oh. No, he's gone to the pool. Yeah. It's just like, oh, really? Yeah. Sandy said she was taking him to the pool today. Oh, okay. Yeah, he will be there later. I was even going to, I might send her a text and say, when you come back from, because usually what they do is they go down to Sweethearts, then they go to the pool, and then they come back here for lunch. So I'm just going to say, if they want to join us, if it happens to coincide down in the cafe. Oh, lovely. Where's those things to photocopy? Okay. I asked them if they would make sure there's a microwave down there.
Not for today, you can.
Sure.
Yeah, because it's gluten free. You might be.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so where can I put it?
Well, I can look in there.
Yes, I think so. That's why, but you got instruction in this one, so I have to.
What does it say? Heat it up.
Yeah, for 200 degrees.
Oh, yeah.
Alright, so you just have to remember 200 degrees.
Yeah.
Until the cheese is completely melted. So I can toss it.
It's all right. Toss it. I think I've got that. Yes.
Oh. So you're also going down? Yeah, I'm going down. I need to. So you said, do they have milk chunky down there?
Yeah.
Milk is only for here, right?
Yeah, because what I thought is if people wanted to come in here, because as I said, I put some soy milk in.
I've got 2 bottles. Do you want me to take one bottle down?
Maybe, and you know the fridge down in the cafe, the little fridge.
I don't know.
Yeah, over on the side.
Yeah.
And they just and actually, if you want to take down some tea bags, because what happened last Friday, and I said, do you have tea bags?
Yes, I'll take some tea.
There's these ones, but I don't know if they're big sachets.
Oh, yes.
So take some in here as well. And if people want tea and they won't have it.
Yes.
Yeah, I took the wrong tea. I have a mix. I just took the English version. I can't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, so you came back up again.
Yeah. Are you coming now?
Yeah, I'm coming down now.
All right. Okay.
Did you run it? You feel-
No, it's just my bad condition.
No, I just saw you were down there just there with me. I ran up the hill.
connection with you, I see.
I'm missing it. Oh, did somebody leave the back door open? We have to keep the back door closed because they get the food.
Try and do it that way.
Any old way, maybe. Good luck. Here comes Wong Mo, the bird nun, to the rescue. We have a bush turkey wanting to join class who is being escorted from the Gompa. Ross, I was, maybe send me an email. I was going to email you. I'm not sure if I got your email. I suppose I have somewhere. Because you're in Armadale, right, Ross? So just about somebody who's in Armadale who might want to enjoy having a Dharma buddy down that way. All right. Yeah, well, there may be a few people, but I'm sure there are a few people in Armadale. We can put you on our prayer list, Sue. Can you keep that in mind, Sue Francis? I took all my pens away. Just
She says in Queensland winter.
I know, think of Tassie or Victoria. Woo. Thanks, Ross. So we can keep Sue. Actually, we might do something now. Where's my mother? Sue, and also for Ingrid's dad, Theo, who passed away. We've been doing prayers here when we do our daily dedications, but we can do some Om Mani Padme Hum, best possible outcomes. I like that because a Buddha knows what the best possible outcome is. I wouldn't have a clue. So we think what we know the best possible outcome. So for Sue, for her mouth surgery, and for Ingrid's dad, Theo, or do you say Teo? Teo. Yeah. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om hum. Om mani padme hum, 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 om mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum, 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 om mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum, padme hum, om mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum. Om mani padme hum. Now we all have a karmic connection. Theo Rekus and Sue Francis. Well, we all have a karmic connection anyway, because here we are together. Okay, dog. So I hope people had a nice refreshment. Somebody was having cake for everybody, and thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So it's nice. Things are starting to open up a little bit here. So our doors are open, and you know, we had this restriction of 20, but we realized if 20 people came in from the outside for a class, we'd be totally blissed out, and that we didn't need to keep a number system. We've talked about every number system in the world and how we're going to manage it, but actually on our property, because you've got to have, you can have 20 people at the moment per area, and then our, you know, sort of COVID researcher on the pandemic person on site, she doesn't want to be our pandemic officer, but she did the research and said it's between the outdoor areas, it's 1.5 meters. So I was like, well, that's what you have to keep anyway. So great, that's fine. But we do have the, as you know, the registration, that's for the authority, government. We get fined if we don't keep that. So that in case in the next 8 weeks, someone here, you know, gets COVID, then they be able to track. That's all. That's what that's for. Okay. So that's it on that. Eva, did you want to talk about the Dharma jewels? Come up here. Come up here and talk to people there.
Yeah, maybe I can log on and send my email.
Okay, Eva will log on and send her email out. I think many of you are already in the Dharma Jewels Club. Those who aren't, that's anybody who wants to be, and just get updates from Eva or me sometimes about, I don't know. Well, we can probably, one time we can have social events again, but it's probably not going to happen this month. So we've got this week, next weekend, and of course, as we said in the email, but probably not enough time for people who's planning that you can come and stay there. The retreat huts are being prepared so that everyone has a retreat hut and their own individual bathroom. So so a couple of the huts are self-contained, as you know. Those are, you know better than me. Actually, I had to go and have a look at the retreat huts to see what it was even in them. Because someone said they like the nun's hut, but different. Similar but different, same, different. But yeah, so anyway, we've got two, as you probably all know, that are self-contained, and then another couple that aren't completely self-contained, but will have their own allocated bathroom if people want to stay either next weekend or subsequently. At the moment, it's by donation. We don't have a functioning booking system. Actually, we don't have a lot of functioning things in this place, but we're gradually getting things functioning because we've been in lockdown for 10 weeks and you know, so forth. Anyway, we're gradually getting systems happening. But, you know, at the moment, all fairly offered by donation. So thank you very much. Of course, we, you know, donations help us to keep being able to offer. So like that. Okay. Announcements over, unless there's any other announcements. So, but I think by July, just looking at the dates, the government, I can hear an echo of myself from the back of the gompa. By July, I think by then we can have 100 people, and a lot of the restrictions are lifted. The indication yesterday seemed to be by 10th of July, but the government's making a decision at the end of the month. But think about that July, open to feedback. Maybe do we want to, anyway, think about it, everybody, and just email me, let me know if you want to have a sort of full weekend retreat for the retreat part of that on the 17th, 18th, I think it is, of July. So just let me know what you're thinking about that. Is it well and truly time? Is it not? Is it too soon? Is it whatever? Yes, but if most people are on Zoom, we'll probably only do the half day because it'll be too much.
Are we going to continue to offer on Zoom as well as in person?
And people can give feedback about that if you'd like to have it continue on Zoom as well. And so far, the feeling is that yes, it's a long way from Armidale, for example, and our border's still closed, as you probably know, Ross. And who knows when that's going to change? But even when it does, I think people further afield. I know also with our basic program, people have been tuning in from other parts of Australia, and even Venerable Kandro from India, and Venerable Pema zoomed in from Italy, and things like that. So it opens up these opportunities. Yeah, we've been talking about doing online for quite some time, a few years, and then finally we were propelled. We had to do it. So it's amazing how you do it because you have to. So it's been an opportunity. Mother of invention. Yeah, it's just like, let's stop talking about it. We got to do it now, Ingrid.
And it's also being recorded. So
This is also being recorded, so sorry about that.
that'll be on YouTube.
It is on YouTube as well. I think Ross is watching on YouTube, he said, or mostly on YouTube. So so it's on YouTube as well. Oh, maybe anyway, complicated one more and then.
Is there any indication of when Geshe-la's Sunday weekend teachings might start again?
Geshe-la's weekend teachings? Yes, I know. We haven't had that conversation yet. At the moment, it's been like, because we started ramping things up a little bit, and at the moment, everyone's feeling here is just let's take things slowly. So
The split DB over 2 weekends.
yeah, that's right.
It's fine while he's not doing it.
That's correct. Yeah. Venerable Wangro was just making the point that to split DB over 2 weekends is fine while Geshe-la's not doing a weekend teaching, but then it would be like 3 weekends out of 4 might be too much for those who are doing everything. So absolutely. Yeah. We're just really taking, doing as you know, the half days and over 2 weekends because of the online factor and that making it easier. But all suggestions and so forth are most welcome because you're the ones who are experiencing it from, the other end, and we're flexible. Hopefully by August, we'll be able to do the Mani retreat. I hope we'll be able to do, or late July, the Mani retreat, but let's just see what happens with that. It was going to be 3 weeks, but because the program's changed again slightly, it looks like it could be about 5 days. So that's maybe something that we can aim for. So everything's just in a state of flux really at the moment. And it's just like, we were just given the heads up for the program. You just decide what you're doing. Okay, rightio, go for it. So all suggestions welcome. And Leonie.
And I was just going to say, the July one, that's the meditation weekend for this module. Is that
Yes,
correct?
the July one's the meditation weekend for this module. So far we've got that advertised as the half day. So again, it's hard to tell because I think our, things coming out of restriction is a bit like when we're going into restrictions. Things keep changing quickly, but our mindsets, as we're seeing, have to catch up as well and what we're wanting to do ourselves, and there's no pressure there. So was there any other questions about that? Or online, was there a question? No. Okay. All right. You can turn me off now, Eva. That'll do it. I'm being switched off. Oh, only on Eva's device so that she could send that email. There you go. So that's probably, you might want to join so you can talk to Eva anyway. She sends out the emails. Okay, so So we get to this famous quote, learn to like problems just like we like ice cream. So this is from the original text. The thought of liking problems should arise naturally. The thought of liking problems should arise naturally. You might think right now, I think for myself, not arising naturally anytime soon, but I'm working on it, you know? The thought of liking problems like ice cream has become very familiarized in my mind. So, you know, way to go.
Depends how close together the problems arise.
Yeah, it depends how close and how big and, you know, whatever. Like the thought of liking ice cream. Or the thought of liking music. So for someone who doesn't like ice cream, a rare breed, I did have a moment in San Francisco when we were trying to put on Happiness and Its Causes conference, and I was in the cab going back from the venue to the center. You know, if you want to talk about obstacles, I think that conference took the cake. Every single obstacle, imagined and unimagined. It was like, you know, sometimes you think, I don't think this is meant to happen. But anyway, I was sitting in the cab going, I think I'm learning to like ice cream. Now, I don't know if it was right thinking. I mean, if I analyze that, maybe it wasn't the right thinking, but I didn't have an ice cream, but I did have lots of problems. We did have lots of problems. Okay, so to transform suffering and problems into the path does not mean that we can dispel problems. Sorry, folks. So as Lama Zopa says, it's developing a different attitude to problems. So we can't dispel problems. I mean, people try that, eliminate your enemies. Has that ever worked in the world? Just look at every world war that ever was, or every whatever. Tragically, you know, and of course at this time, you know, there's a lot of deaths happening in the world because of this disturbance of mind. So we can see how serious that is. We can't dispel problems such as illnesses. They're working on a cure, but they say we may never have one. We just got to learn to live with it. And so this is transforming it into a new way of life, if we like, so forth. So they will not recur. So we can't eliminate, as Shanti Davis said, there's not enough leather in the world to be able to cover the whole world. You know, you got to put the leather on, you know, wear shoes on your feet. As I always say, except in Namibia, it doesn't work out there in the desert with those giant thorns that rip your soles apart. The soles of your feet, not soles of your feet apart, of your shoes, not your feet. Anyway, you know what he was talking about. So we have to protect our mind. We can't make all the environment, everything out there in the world accommodate me. Because guess what? Every one of us has our own individual universe and we're all different. So we all want a different universe around us. Anyway, we know it's impossible to do that. So rather, to ensure problems don't arise as obstacles to our spiritual path, that they don't arise as obstacles, but what? Challenges, opportunities, and instead become an aid to further our peace of mind and ultimate happiness. So we're changing our intention of how we attend to the problem. We see it, okay, that's a problem. You know, there used to be a saying when I was younger, probably still is a saying, you know, if you want to see how enlightened you are, go and spend a week with your parents. But actually I got on quite well with my parents, so I wasn't enlightened. But you know what they were saying? The difficulties when we're together in family. It can be any level of family. Actually, I feel quite blessed by my family. We all get on famously. And then you hear of, I mean, we don't all live together. Maybe that would be different. I don't know. It's hypothetical, but it's often these problems arise. You say, well, actually, it's not. And people often say that when we're doing that meditation on equanimity of, you know, visualizing the friend, the enemy and the stranger. And you say, well, actually, it's my dear loved one who sort of moves into the next camp often. Roller skates between the two, said Venerable Wongma. So yeah, there's a few people on roller skates. They quickly move, isn't it? So it's often that, I mean, the people who are closest to us have our greatest opportunity for us to practice a spiritual path. This is why families are so important. I mean, they're important for other reasons, but this is a good reason why they're so important. So rather than expect everything to be a hunky-dory in any environment, it's unrealistic, isn't it? We work towards harmony. We work towards peace. We work towards other things. Like the Dalai Lama said, if every school kid in the world started to meditate at an early age, with one generation, we would have world peace. This is true, but can we really, does our mind go, yeah, that's going to happen tomorrow? No, it doesn't, does it? And say, that's great, but will it happen? Well, we can start, you know, we just sort of widen the circle, widen the circle, widen the circle. All we can start with is ourselves and widen our own circle of positivity, of knowing what we're on this path for. So even as I have experienced being called a Pollyanna, I mean, most of the time I'm not that positive, so it must have been a rare moment. And I mean, it's not that I don't work on it. It might sound like I'm just, well, I am lazy. Okay, so I work at it, and then that feeling like, and I think that sort of attitude can arise. You're being too nice. I mean, I used to be like that. It was like, oh, things are getting too nice. A friend of mine said that he always ended a relationship while the going was good, because pretty sure it was going to end up bad. I said, oh, that's a new approach. Most people wait till it does get bad. You end up while it's good, on a high. I suppose he always had good relationships. It's one way of thinking it. I mean, needless to say, he hasn't had a relationship for about 30 years. But I think he's happy with that. I don't think he's listening. Okay. All right. So we shift our perspective, how we perceive things, how we relate to problematic situations, people, and so forth. So then, you know, I was going to read some of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Before we get on to this, no, that can come up there. Okay, I know where I'm going there. Okay, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, developing a different attitude to problems. In this degenerate time, human beings are especially overwhelmed by suffering with many problems and much unhappiness. This is because their weak minds are unable to recognize as beneficial the problems and harm they experience and to see them as causes of happiness. That's pretty radical, isn't it? To see, you know, somebody's in your face angry, oh, they're the cause of my happiness. But we can at least, you know, do that practice of, in our minds, may you be well, may you be happy, you know, put something in there positive, or in our mind, a mantra. Because while we're engaging in something positive that is indeed protection for the mind, we're not allowing the mind to be hijacked off onto anger or some other toxic emotion, you know. So we can bring in, we can think, oh, what do I do when that's happening? Oh, Vajrasattva to the rescue. Or Om Mani Padme Hum, you know, easy to remember. Anything. Think of a Buddha. Think of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Think of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So training our mind to, you know, that way we're bringing in the other thing that we depend on in refuge is the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, you know, or the precious three rare sublime ones, as Lama Zopa says, you know, the Buddha or the Guru as Buddha. So thinking of the teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha, our own teachers and so forth. Thinking of the Dharma, Om Mani Padme Hum. I mean, it doesn't have to be, you know, you're reviewing the whole Lam Rim right there in front of the person who's in your face, you know. But if you can, go for it. Or the Arya Sangha, all the great realized beings that we rely on, all those lineage lamas and so forth. So just, you know, see what tricks, what practices, which I just call tricks, but they're practices, they're Dharma practices, can I engage the mind in at that time when it really wants to just kick and scream. you know. So we practice with the little things until we get good at then bigger. So instead of seeing all the harms caused by living beings and non-living things as sufferings, you should develop the habit of recognizing them as supporting beneficial conditions. So, as Rinpoche says, start with small ones, and gradually, as you become more accustomed to this, you'll be able to recognize serious problems as good. I mean, we can't start with the most difficult situation and say, it's good. I mean, we can say it, but we don't believe it, let alone act on it. We want to get the hell out of there. And it's wisdom in that. We have to look at our capacity, what we are capable of doing. Right. Even seeing them as pleasurable is what the Bodhisattva practice of seeing them as joyful. Wow, as Lama Zopa says, necessary for your happiness. We get it intellectually, but how do we practice this? The practice of thought transformation is not intended to stop problems, but to enable you to use the problems you experience to develop your mind in the Lam Rim, the graduated path to enlightenment. It's not that you will not receive harm from enemies and diseases now or in the future. You'll simply not be disturbed by them. These problems cannot disturb your practices of Dharma, your attainment of realizations of the path to enlightenment. In fact, not only do they not disturb you, problems actually help you develop your mind and continue your Dharma practice. So how do we do this? You train your mind in two thoughts. One is of stop the habitual thought of complete aversion to suffering. And two, generate the thought of being happy to experience the problem. When you've accomplished this and actually feel happy rather than unhappy that you have problems, problems will no longer be obstacles to generating the path of enlightenment within your own mind. So this is a practice for at least one lifetime, if not many, isn't it? So this practice, last time, those who were with us last time, we talked about this practice of Tonglen, of taking and giving, and it's a meditation that really turns our mind from the self-cherishing thought, which we've been doing, which is the cause of all our problems, to a mind of cherishing others. We're having to deliberately turn our mind. So if we look at these two aspects, the self-grasping and self-cherishing. So the self-grasping, as we said earlier, is holding on to this sense of me that doesn't exist anywhere. Of course, there's another module to come about emptiness, and we'll be going in more detail there. I can still say, I mean, I'm running out of modules to say there's another module to come, but there are two more. Yay. Oh, this is our 2-year anniversary of this course, those who've been doing for 2 years. So if you're feeling like this is the deep end, you're right, it is. 2 years, those who've been along on the journey for 2 years or any part thereof, yay.
2 years you've been permanently up there.
2 years I've been permanently up here, even more permanently of late.
Sort of permanently.
No, I have for 2 years. Wow. Okay, self-grasping mind is based on our ignorance or confusion about how we exist. Not that we do exist, of course, we're here. You know, we're all, some of us are here physically present in the Gompa, others are on Zoom, I can see you. Those who have your videos on, and I can see your names if you don't. So we're familiar with this mind of holding on to this view of me, who is the center of my universe, and seeing everything else relating to me. you know, how others are affecting me, how the environment is affecting me, and my me gets bigger and bigger and bigger, isn't it? This me that doesn't exist anywhere, that I've imputed upon this body and mind, this, we say the aggregates, the combination of my body and mind, form, feeling, discrimination, composition of factors, consciousness, these 5 aggregates, which compose the body and mind. And I've created my story, you know, and that's who I am, right? And so this can be a great obstacle, usually is a great obstacle, because we do so much, if we think about it, to then care for this me that doesn't exist anyway, has no foundation anywhere, but appears to, you know, this is our grasping at having this self. And this is the root of all our problems, based on our ignorance. And then on top of that, we cherish this self. In other words, we feed it, we clothe it, we make it comfortable, we make it nice, we stroke it, we do whatever. We overestimate it. So this becomes, and then mine, what's mine, you know, my house, my family, my this, my everything. And doing everything to look after me and my. So the Arya Bodhisattva, which we're wanting to become, doesn't hold on to this, doesn't grasp at any wrong appearance as true. So things appear, but they don't grasp at them as being existing in the way they appear. So until you become a Buddha, things will still appear in that way. But once you're had a direct perception of emptiness, they no longer, the mind no longer believes that appearance. Right? So you understand things as they are. So you understand that the way things appear aren't as they are. This is why we say it's like a dream. We train our mind to think it's like an illusion, like a dream. A dream when you're dreaming can feel so real, right? And then you wake up and go, oh, it was just a dream. So this is what we train our mind during the daytime to think. It's like a dream. It's not a dream, but it's like a dream. So conventionally, everything's existing, but it doesn't have inherent, which means independent, out there existence, nothing to do with me, because everything's interconnected, everything's interdependent, so therefore subject to change. But we see everything as fixed, permanent, out there, and affecting me, you know. So this is the danger of the self-cherishing mind. So we turn that to cherish others. So in our retreat book, we have appropriate verses. I'm deciding what page. Surprise. Okay, I think, I mean, there's so many of these verses. Okay, so it's good to start. Those of you who have the book, page 152, it's LC 91. This chronic disease of cherishing myself. That's pretty strong. So we've got to think of the faults of self-cherishing. The chronic disease of cherishing myself is the cause giving rise to my unsought suffering. So we want happiness, but we're actually keep creating our own suffering because it's based on an incorrect idea of reality. And perceiving this is incorrect, perceiving this, I seek your blessings to blame, begrudge, and destroy the monstrous demon of selfishness. So in the 7-point mind transformation, it says, put the blame on the one. So instead of blaming out there, put the blame, I immediately go here. I mean, it's not a me there, but that's where I conceptualize me. But we have this sense of, you know, me. We go, oh, you hurt me. You know, everything's about me. Here's me. Actually, even Punsel Rinpoche did that when he recognized his previous incarnation, Geshe Lama Konchok. Has anyone seen the film? Unmistaken Child. You seen the film Unmistaken Child? He sees the photo up on the altar and he goes, me. He went there. So I feel like I'm in good company then. Me. But then I know this me that isn't there. Like, can't open it up and go, oh, there I am. I mean, weird, isn't it? Oh, there's me. And he's all of this me because then it's mine. It's my body. It's my head. It's my hand. It's my everything. So am I out there owning this me here? You know, so anyway, we'll go in more detail in the module on emptiness. Do we need this light? We have it for Geshe-lo because so that is good contrast on the line. So, yes, it's a disease. And as it says, 7-point mind training, here it is. Even if the environment and beings are filled with fruits of negative karma, which means even if there's disaster having left, right, and center surrounding me in the whole world, and an unwished for suffering pours down like rain. So we feel like that, don't we? We feel like, oh, when's it going to stop, you know? You know, as Venerable Wangwa said earlier, but then another problem comes along and you deal with that. I seek your blessings to take these miserable conditions as a path. So this is this training, by seeing them as causes to exhaust the results of my negative karma, to say that it is arising like that because my karma is ripening. I mean, I don't go out there in the world and, well, Lama Zopa does. I mean, say, COVID is a cause of past negative karma. But I'm not going to say that to my family. I'm not going to say to the shopkeeper. I'm not going to say to the medics. I'm not going to say to any of those people. But to understand, because you still have to deal with it on a convention. You still have to deal with it. You've got to take the necessary measures. But it is, we can see on the positive side, it's exhausting on past negative karma, because what we're experiencing now is a result of what we've done in past lives. And who knows how many lifetimes ago that was, and collectively, and it all just ripened right now, who knows? You know, I guess we all had to come together as human beings or something on this planet rather than as animals for that to, I mean, think about it. It's complicated. Karma is complicated. So that's ripened now. And if I don't want to keep experiencing the same results, just like the scientists say, we have to be ready for the next pandemic. We've got to be ready for the next problem that arises. So we have to train our minds, you know, because the problem's going to still keep coming. That's the whole point, isn't it? No matter what appearances arise, be they good or bad, I seek your blessings to transform them into a path. Oh, then it's going on to other things, so we won't worry about that. That's a little bit of another teaching. Okay, and then we come back to LC 95. Sorry, I'm skipping around a bit, aren't I? Everyone following me? We're on page 161 now. And thus, perfect, pure, compassionate Guru, I seek your blessings that all negative karmas, obscurations, suffering, mother transmigratory beings, that's of everyone else, ripen upon me. This doesn't mean I get everybody's headaches, I get everybody's COVID, I get everybody's disease, I get everybody's mental health issues, I get everybody's whatever issues. It doesn't mean that. It means, may I develop a mind wishing for them to be free of it. I can't bear to see your suffering. As the, you know, medical, paramedic said, how can I help others relieve their fear and anxiety? It was a genuine question, right? He was reaching out for help. When I'm full of fear and anxiety, how can I help others? And that's that whole point of, I have to transform my mind and say, my experience of this fear and anxiety, because I didn't say that to him because he wasn't Buddhist. I did what Geshe said, just telling me he's doing a fantastic job and wow, 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 and how amazing and how amazing and how amazing. Because it's true. But I did give him also some just elementary meditation tips. I hope they helped him to at least, you know, calm the mind down, because he was also suffering insomnia as a result. So just try to help in that direction. So that they may experience happiness, you know. It says, giving all my happiness and virtue to others, all transmigratory beings may experience happiness. So this is the whole point of this practice of Tonglen. And it's always said to start with ourselves, that, you know, whatever sufferings we have, may my experience of this be a cause for others to never have to experience this. Of course, you know, we can't prevent that, both on a conventional level. We can't prevent that, but we can train our mind in wishing them to be free of it. That's what we're doing. By bringing our focus, instead of on number one, we've been doing since beginningless time, of everybody else, not everyone else, ourselves included. That's why we start with ourselves. May I experience, like, you know, when I had some of you have heard, you know, when I came out of the shower, slipped on the kitchen floor and really hurt my back bad. I mean, when I think about it, it's only the one time in my life so far I've really hurt my back badly. So far, so good. But then, you know, a week, you know, within the next week, I fell over again. This was a very long time ago, right? Don't have to worry about me falling frequently, right? I'm not at that age yet. You may disagree. Anyway, so I fell over again and I hurt more. And I was like, okay, may everyone who's ever experienced back pain or never will be free of that. Now, can you take this pain away? So don't expect your pain's going to go away anytime soon, but at least you've used it for a good benefit. You've still got to recover like everybody else. So it's not about...
The other side of that is, if you think about it, you don't have to think about it long to always find in your mind so many people who've got far worse back pain than you.
Yes.
They've got a totally broken back and can't ever walk again. So
Yeah.
puts it in context.
It puts it in context. It's like the woman who, at the time of the Buddha, was in such distress about, you know, her baby died. She had a baby in her arms and went to the Buddha and wanted the Buddha to bring the baby back to life, right? Some of you know this story. And so the Buddha said, yes, I will do that on the condition that you get mustard seeds from a household where nobody's died. And so, of course, she goes around to every single household and they tell her about the death that had happened here, the death here, the death here. And she comes back to the Buddha and asks for teachings because she realizes this is the nature of life. If you're going to have a body, you're going to die. So, you know, like that. So, I'm just going to check here, page 55. I don't know if I trust my numbers. Yeah, so Lama Zopa Rinpoche, experiencing your problems for others, experience every single undesirable thing on behalf of all sentient beings. So we're going to have the pain anyway. We're going to have the suffering anyway. We're going to have the problem anyway. And just think, it really helps, is a benefit to our mind to think, may my experience of this relieve anyone else of having it. We've seen this with COVID, those who've got it really badly and said, I never want anyone else to experience this. You have no idea what it was like. Like I was saying, I was chatting with a friend last night, and both of us, you know, as adults, and I don't remember as a baby, my mum says I had pneumonia, but as adults, we've had pneumonia. And he was saying, oh, people whose attitude are just like, oh, well, if I get it, I get it. They haven't had pneumonia. But if you've had pneumonia and they'll say it's even worse, then you think, I don't want anyone else to have that. It's terrible suffering. Although Chodam Rinpoche did say, purify eons of hot hell. So I hope he's right. I don't know how many more eons of hot hells I've got to go. Probably quite a few. Bring it on. Well, I did say bring it on, but not too quickly. It tells you, well, we seek progress, we do seek perfection, but slowly. Okay. So, Tonglen practice. What else do we want to say? So we have to contemplate, to even engage in this sort of mind, the different faults arising from self-cherishing. So as we said, it's a chronic disease, causes of all our sufferings, and Bodhisattva's way of life, which some of us are studying here with Geshe-la Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Anyone welcome to join? All worldly sufferings have occurred that have occurred stemmed from wanting happiness for oneself. I mean, we hear the words, but we have to unpack it and really go, do I believe that? You know, yes, of course, it's given me, I mean, I really loved the chocolate cake at one point in my life, because I don't eat chocolate cake now because chocolate poisoned my body. But at one point, I really enjoyed chocolate cake. And those of you who do eat chocolate cake, you know the first slice is very nice. I mean, it was Venerable Cartson's birthday last Friday, and we know he likes chocolate. He also gave a hint in the tea. I said, are you a hinting? Because, you know, as a Sangha, we're not allowed to hint, you know. You don't ask for things and you don't hint. And he was saying something about 10 blocks of dark chocolate. And I thought, you're going to get so many blocks of dark chocolate piled up on your desk. And it'll become suffering, yes. And then it's suffering.
Next birthday, you'll be saying, please no.
That's right.
I know. I know, Alan Wallace said that one time. He said, I used dark chocolate as an example one time. Now everyone always gives me dark chocolate. And I said, I'm just using an example. But I have noticed he does like chocolate. And so does Venerable Carlson. Okay. Anything that befalls the worldly, that's us of the world, ordinary beings, as we say, any fear and suffering, all stemmed from self-cherishing. Why should I have this great devil? So, and it says, put the blame on to the one thing alone, which is the self-cherishing thought. That is, all your unwanted suffering. This is Pabonka Rinpoche, Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. There's a wonderful section in here on the 7-point mind training. Coming to grief through weapons, poison, and non-human evildoers, such as gods or nagas, we would say spirits, wouldn't we? Spirit harm or something like that. Reborn in hell as hungry ghosts, animals, etc., are due to killing others in the hope of some gain for your own. So this is a past karma ripening. I mean, this is Pabonka Rinpoche, teacher of our teachers. So he was like teacher of Trijang Rinpoche, who's the root guru of Lama Zopa Rinpoche and so forth, and the junior tutor to His Holiness the Dalai Lama and so forth and so forth. So just saying, he was pretty up there. He's saying this. So he'd know more about karma. Due to killing others in the hope of getting some gain for your own happiness, or being miserly, or treating others with contempt. So if we don't want those sorts of results, I think again. Likewise, succumbing to the disease of, they say of the humours, this relates to Tibetan medicine, of wind, bile and phlegm. Like when you see the Tibetan doctor, they say you have more tendency. Us Westerners apparently have the wind one. It means the air, we're very agitated minds, just very discursive minds. So we have that one apparently big time. And phlegm, I'm not sure what the phlegm one is. I mean, I know what phlegm is, but yeah, anyway, those who've studied Tibetan medicine will know. Or not to abandon, or to not, hold on, what's this? Fearing enemies, getting into quarrels, or fearing prosecution by the authorities. The other, it comes from those. Or, listen to this, gorging yourself on food because of self-cherishing. Or not abandoning your obsession with food, fashion, and fame. I think we're okay, girls, on the fashion front. This is a 2,600-year-old fashion, and we're okay on that level. And this comes back to the 8 worldly concerns, you know, or the worldly concerns generally, which is wanting to be praised, you know, wanting people, you're concerned about your status in the world, your reputation, that people think nicely of you, and so forth and so forth. And you're concerned about that. Like you want more of that. You want people to praise you. You want all of this thing that's being caught up in a worldly concern. You want everything to be nice, pleasant sounds, pleasant everything. You want to accumulate. I was going to say stuff. It doesn't have to be necessarily material stuff, but gain. You know, it usually is said material gain. and you don't want to suffer the loss. I always think about the people in the bushfires and everything who lose everything instantly. I know they're fighting the authorities at the moment to get the money recompense and whatever. So maybe they haven't let go of that attachment to having things. But somehow your mind has to deal with, now you've lost everything. You have to deal with that. You know, it happens. If it happens. So what one have I left out? Have I left one out? You want good reputation, you want fame, you want pleasant, and you want gain. And you don't want the opposites. You don't want loss, but that's the nature of life, you know. Relationships end, people die, things change, you lose your house, you lose family, you lose lots, you know, whole. So look at that. That's all the self-cherishing, getting caught up in food, fashion, fame, and so forth. Ooh. And then when you're at the top of the ladder and kings, we can say world leaders, ministers, and the whole country fight, or on the bottom rung, their subjects. That's us, I guess. Families, etc., argue. Or when monks squabble, maybe nuns are included. He was a monk and he was talking to monks. Self-cherishing is a thought. Don't have self-cherishing. Instead, have an attitude, I don't care. You do what you like. It doesn't mean you don't care about others. It means you're not going to let that affect you. This was the practice of the Kadampa masters, that I know what I'm on about, Buddhahood, and that's what I'm working towards. And you can criticize me. It's not going to affect me. This is hard stuff, isn't it? Hard stuff. Whew. Okay. So if we look at it from the karma point of view, we can see these things are ripening. So we see that person in our face, or that person threatening us, or so forth. That karma is personal. You know, we have at some point in past, if not this life, past lives, directly harmed that individual. It may have been eons ago, it may have been a slight harm, it may have been in an animal form, it could have been anything, but that has multiplied in the meantime because we haven't purified it in our mind, and we can always do that. But if we haven't, it is going to ripen in this situation. So this is a ripening, and if we can think of it as, oh, another karmic debt repaid, wouldn't that be fantastic? But of course we don't. The poor self-cherishing mind freaks out. So we've got to think of it like that. So we've got to see that self-grasping and self-cherishing are two distinct things, but it's on the basis of the self-grasping at this innate sense of self that we then elaborate on top of what is there, what isn't there, and make a whole story. And that's the self-cherishing mind, okay? The root of all our problems, this feeling of I, me. Okay, where were we? Tonglen. So willingly taking onto ourselves whatever is desirable, unwanted, painful, problems, suffering of our own. You know, we have this in the, you know, when we're looking at the practice of the 6 perfections, a practice of patience with our own illness. It doesn't mean don't do anything, but to tolerate illness, to tolerate difficulties, to tolerate suffering. Of course, do what you can to change it. But as Shanti said, if you can't do something to change it, there's no point worrying about it. You just make it worse. So taking is a movement of compassion, opening our heart to let in, you know, compassionate heart, wishing to take suffering from and on behalf of all beings, and then wishing to give them every happiness. Now, again, we're not really taking away the suffering of the world. Jesus Christ nailed on the cross for that. And did it happen? No, you can't actually, but you can have that infinite mind of compassion, just like Jesus Christ. Was that the one with the bleeding heart? Was that Jesus Christ had the bleeding heart? Anybody else? No, when he died, yeah, he had the spear there. I think it was the bleeding heart. I mean, I did grow up a Catholic. Anyone else grow up a Catholic? I remember this robe open like this, and the heart and blood and thorns. No, thorns were here. Oh, well, you know what I mean. So this is not a literal thing, but that out of the tears, like Chenrezig, of not bearing to see the compassion for the world. You want others to be free of it. And then having this a mind of immeasurable love. We covered this with the 7-point cause and effect, Arya Sanga's 7-point cause and effect. The love, seeing others as pleasant. So this means, regardless we have an aversion to someone or something, to find something pleasant about them that can engage a genuine love. Could be tricky. I mean, I was just thinking of a snake. I don't have a huge aversion to snakes. I've never been threatened by a snake yet. Maybe I will change. And I've seen a few around here. But I haven't yet been threatened by it. But then I have to think, this snake too doesn't want to suffer. This snake wants to be happy. So when it's sunning itself on the path, well, I think it's got a right to be there just as much as I do. You know, it's like, it's not like that snake's in my way. That's the self-cherishing mind. This is my path. Don't you know? It goes to my hut. The bush turkeys don't know that, because every day I come out, there's a pile of rubbish on the path. They have a field day up there. Or they have a field day everywhere, actually. I got quite intimate with with the bush turkeys. We chat. You know, you probably think I'm weird.
The ones generally she does. I talk, but they don't listen.
They don't listen.
You just had a conversation with bush turkey when you were walking down.
It followed me all the way down, and then it was in the Gompa when we got back. So,
Yeah, the bush turkey was in the Gompa. And, you know, I did have a moment of thought, maybe it just came for the Dharma. Maybe it should stay.
Not to, you can listen outside.
I mean, they have the karma to be at a Dharma centre. So as bush turkeys go, and I always think bush turkeys, I mean, because they're a native species, they're protected. So they have some pretty good karma going on, these bush turkeys. So, you know, well, it is a pure land. It's a pure land for all of us. So we're sort of running out of, coming towards the end of our time together here. But I did want to point again to how we can incorporate this easily in a daily practice. And indeed, we do that here. On page 85, the 4 immeasurable thoughts. So this is the 4 immeasurable thoughts, long form, the mind of immeasurable equanimity. How wonderful, and this is sort of just summarizing all we've been talking about, training our mind in this way. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were to abide in equanimity, free from the closeness of attachment and distance of hatred. May they abide in equanimity. I myself will cause them to abide in equanimity. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. So I often think, and then Rinpoche has given us the Tonglen meditation for this, taking on all the disturbing emotions of sentient beings, giving them to your self-cherishing thought, which is like a hard rock at the heart, that it's the heart center, not our physical heart, heart chakra at the center of our chest. It's sort of like, it makes us hard, makes our minds hard, you know, cuts us off from others, puts them out there, doesn't see a connection, right? So we're finding the way of making a connection. And then destroying this self-cherishing mind, this self-grasping and self-cherishing, smashing it to smithereens in our minds. As you know, it would be great if we could do that in one instant, wouldn't it? But it's going to take a lot of pain to do that, actually, mental pain, to actually do that. But slowly, slowly we do it, so we don't freak the poor mind out and we keep practicing. But I often think, you know, this one, I find it helpful to just call to mind anything in the news where people are at loggerheads with each other or conflict or something. And, you know, think of, may they stop having that discriminatory mind, partial mind, may they stop fighting with each other. So sort of find ways of making these real, you know, immeasurable loving kindness. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were to achieve Buddhahood. May they achieve Buddhahood. I myself will cause them to achieve Buddhahood. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. And then there's the happiness and its causes one as well. Transforming your body into a wish-granting jewel that gives every sentient being every type of temporary and ultimate happiness. So we can think of, may you have all the medicine, giving them all your health, giving them all your positive states of mind. of course, I mean, literally, it's not like they're taking those away from you. It only ever grows and grows and grows. So you're sharing. Sharing is caring, right? So we're sharing all that with others. The most important thing you can give is the Dharma. And it doesn't mean that you all become teachers. So think about it, folks. But it does mean that in the way that you put these into practice in your life, then you become a role model for others. You become an inspiration for others. Not everyone's going to bow down to you, or maybe they will, but maybe you don't want that. But that, you know, that people are attracted to you because the Bodhisattva wants people to be attracted to them so they can hook them in to the path. Cook them a nice meal, as Venerable Charles in Institute Vajrayogini, with bodhicitta. He'll never tell you the ingredients. He'll only say, what's in that shell? Bodhicitta. No, I really want to know what's in it. I have a few allergies. Bodhicitta. And I just have to go with, well, the bodhicitta is going to protect me. I hope I'm okay. Okay, immeasurable compassion. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they be free from suffering and causes. This is the compassion one, wishing they're free. I myself will cause and be free from suffering and its causes. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. So imagine taking on all the suffering and causes of suffering of all sentient beings, all the COVID of the world, people in Brazil, wherever is, you know, particularly suffering, or the mental disturbances of minds, everything, you know, to wishing them to be free of it. So this is, who benefits from this? We do. So as His Holiness says, if you want to be selfish, be wisely selfish. This is being wisely selfish. Immeasurable joyfulness. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were never to be separated from happiness of higher rebirth and liberation. May they never be separated from these. I myself will cause them never to be separated from these. So each one of these lines ups the ante. It's just not, oh yeah, wouldn't it be nice? It's like, oh, I'm going to do it. I'll make it happen. That's the courage of a bodhisattva. Please, Guru Deity. In other words, I always think, need your help. All you Buddhas, everybody, come on down. Oh, whatever. Please bless me to be able to do this, so that, you know, joyfulness arises in our mind. First of all, right here and now, we can have joyfulness in just spending this time together this morning. How amazing, really amazing. You've got to believe that it is. And by rejoicing in each other's merit, then we multiply our merits, and then it just sort of grows and grows. But in that growing and growing, our mind of its own nature becomes more and more positive. And so then we're able to deal with things. We become more resilient, more determined. This is what I want more of. Thank you very much. And we're able to deal with, you know, dealing with problems when your mind's in a good space is so much easier than when your mind's in a bad space, correct? So this is what we're doing. We're training the mind in that good space. Excellent. So we'll leave it here for today. I know it doesn't seem that long. Virginia, hi. Does everyone come and say hello to everybody? I'll try and unmute you all. You know, I'm not very good at this technology, but I'll give it a go. Where's the mute thing? I think I pressed that one and it unmutes. Yeah.
Space here for some.
Okay. Hey, Gompo. Hello. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Sui. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
I'll try and put you on gallery. I might even succeed at that as well.
Oh, hang on. I have a little finger something.
Hey, look at this.
Everyone.
Amazing.
Waving, look at that, it's wonderful.
Okay, we'll see you tomorrow morning. Stay safe. And what did I say? This afternoon, Geshe Zopo online,
Yeah, 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock on YouTube.
Compassion.
And especially if you happen to have participated in that practice and taken that practice, but even so, you can still just learn about the practice. Singanada, the lion's roar, exalted lion's roar, compassionate Buddha. Okay, see you in the morning.
Thank you.
We're off to lunch in the cafe. Woo.
Enjoyed.
BYO lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ciao.
Yes,
They just like